Hi, welcome to my class. I appreciate you taking the time out of your crazy schedule to meet with me and discuss the progress of your child, Carrie White. Carrie is such a wonderful young lady. She is quite the social butterfly in the classroom. She's really friendly to all her classmates and comes in every morning with the biggest smile on her face. I look forward to shaking her hand every morning as she greets me positively and with an excitement to learn. She is quite the enthusiastic learner, which I find very impressive, especially at her age. And I just want to, eat that up and use it to our advantage and use it to help her progress. And she's come a long way when it comes to learning and loving to learn. Um, as you know, as we talked about, she still kind of has a little bit of issues with George. However, I found that just by keeping them apart and seating arrangements, by having them on opposite sides of the classroom, the issues have decreased, and there's been very little disruption between the two. So it's not something I'm presently worried about. It's just some usual second grade quarreling. But like I said, she's very social to her classmates. Her classmates love her. We love her, and I love having her in my class because she brings such a positive attitude and happiness to our learning environment. She has definitely shown some significant improvement in her work ethic. I have been pleasantly surprised to see her continual effort and focus in completing her assignments, and she has such a humble and willingness attitude when it comes to asking questions and getting help when she's not sure of things, which is such a strong attribute in the classroom and just in life in general. And we definitely need more enthusiastic, willing, and humble learners like Carrie. So I really love having her in my classroom and having her as that example student. Um, as you know, I love to assess my students as often as I can so I can kind of just see where they're at, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. Today I'd like to talk about her literacy progress. I've administered a few assessments in hopes to see the specific areas we can work on, both at school and at home, in order to continue to help her develop academically and reach what you and I both know that she is capable of. One of the first assessments that I gave her was the Burke reading interview. Um, and this reading interview is just kind of to get to know who she thinks she is as a reader, um, what she recognizes about reading, the strategies she knows that she uses, how often she's reading, what kind of book she's interested in reading, and as well as kind of seeing how her confidence is in her reading abilities. So for me, that's kind of a way that I use to assess and really get to know her and what she thinks as what her reading strengths are. I also gave 3 reading records. Um, Throughout this last month, where I was able to assess Carrie's reading progress by evaluating her oral reading, by identifying the kind of error patterns that she had when she would make a mistake, and kind of just assessing that fluency. They were used to, again, help me assess her strengths and weaknesses so I can make specific plans to help her both at school and at home in her reading and self correction strategies, that kind of a thing as well. I give her the PSI, which is a spelling assessment that is only given at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. It's not something that we want them to see often because it helps me assess her word knowledge and her phonics understandings and kind of determine where she is with her understandings with those skills when it comes to spelling and the spelling stage that she is currently in. The names test was a test that I administered where I gave her a list of names, a second grade level names for her to read, which again addresses all the phonics categories, kind of like with the spelling, with this time with the reading. And it helps me see the same things that I saw in her spelling with her phonics abilities, phonics understandings, but when it comes to reading, and kind of see how well she's doing in each phonics category is which ones are her strengths that we can just continue to um, help her continue to develop, or the ones that kind of we can work on a little bit more, give her a little extra modeling, um, partner work, that kind of thing. For comprehension, I just did a retelling record sheet where I had her read at 3 separate times books. asked her to retell me information about the books, the story. I gave one with a familiar text, a familiar fiction text, where semi-familiar. She had only read it once, but she had read it, at one point, so she was familiar with it. One with an unfamiliar fiction book, and then one with an unfamiliar nonfiction book. And I just kind of wanted to assess her understanding of those texts, how she was able to relay the stories or the information back to me. It helps me see how she's able to remember parts of the story, remember meaning, all that kind of thing without prompts from me. As far as her writing's concerned, I took some writing samples to compare to language, to her language use in those writing, to her message quality, and to the directional understanding that she has, to see how well she is with those writing level curriculum for her age. And between each of those writing samples, I averaged the scores between the language, message quality, and direction to kind of, see how well she's doing in her areas of writing as well. And then the last assessment I gave was a sentence dictation, which was another writing one where I read aloud a sentence, short story, it was about 2 sentences long, that she wrote down as I read it. And, I went over it a few times to make sure she understood on the word. And this wasn't a assessment that necessarily where I graded her or looked at her correctness, but to see how close she was conventionally, and kind of, where the mistakes made sense. If she was, helps me identify the specific sounds she's hearing, how she's able to, take those sounds that she hears and put it onto paper. And it also included some sight words, so I can see how well she's doing with her sight words as well, since of course that is, something that they need to learn early on in order to continue with their reading, writing, spelling, all literacy aspects. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to first talk to you about some of her areas of strength. She has so many. There's a couple in particular that I'd love to focus on, just let you know about, because that I've noticed through those assessments, because she's come a long way, and I think you would be really proud of where she is now. When it comes to comprehension, kind of like I had mentioned earlier, in those retelling record assessments that I had, she was really, really, really strong at remembering beginning, middle, and end for familiar texts, and especially for fiction texts. She understands stories really well. She's able to relay back those stories with very little aided prompts. Actually, for the familiar text, I didn't have to aid her in any prompts, and she got very, very specific details from the stories, which is so strong and so amazing for her age. And the thing that even impressed me more than that is that she is able to relay theme, and she was able to tell me some meanings about some of those, about the fiction stories, and kind of what she took out of it. So she went beyond telling the story. So I find that a very, very solid strength for Carrie, and it's something you should be really, really proud of, because she's come a long way. Reading is about understanding and about making meaning, and she does that really well when it comes to fiction texts and familiar texts. From the running records assessment that I took, I was able to see that her independent reading level has actually progressed. I know that at the beginning of the year she was a level 10 when it came to her independent reading, but now she's at a level 12 for independent reading and has an accuracy of 97%, which is super, super strong. She made hardly any errors. She had a couple self-corrections, which is great. She caught herself, fixed it. So I definitely see that as a strength and something that she's definitely progressed in. When it comes to the spelling category, she's really, really strong with her initial and final consonants, as well as her short vowels in her words. I put her at the late letter name alphabetic stage, meaning that she has those things down really well. In the PSI, which is where I got this information and was able to see those strengths, she got a 7 out of 7 on her initial consonants, 7 out of 7 on her final consonants, and 6 out of 7 on her short vowels. So, she understands those concepts, she's getting them really well, and I definitely would look at that as one of her strengths in her literacy. And then one of the last strengths that I would love to mention is that when it comes to writing, she is really good at writing sentences and understanding directional patterns and like word spacing and stuff like that. She scored an average of 4.5 on language level, 4.5 on message quality, and a 5 on directional principles. And that's between all the writing samples that I looked at. The directional principles, like I said, understanding, left to right, up, down, that kind of a thing, as well as spacing in between words, paragraphs, tab in kind of for the beginning, that kind of a thing. And when it comes to sentences, she understands, the different parts of a sentence that need to be in there. You have your subjects, you have your verbs, like that kind of a thing. So she's definitely grasping those concepts and she's really strong with them. I would love to keep, fostering that learning and that understanding when it comes to the comprehension and relaying that information back at school. I want to kind of move past that a little bit more and not only have her continue to give me those details, but learn to do so summarizing maybe through visuals on charts, diagrams, pictures, that kind of a thing. That's kind of my next step that I want to take her and continue to push her a little bit harder and a little bit past that strength so we can just, keep her moving forward on that scale. And as I work on that summarizing, she at home, I would love it if you can just spend a lot of time reading authentic texts, her independently at home. It would be great if you had read the text before and let her just talk about her reading, let her talk about the stories, have conversation about them, help her continue to make those connections and make that meanings in her reading. She already does really well, but I would love to just continue to, scaffold that understanding, both at school and at home. With her reading level, like I said, 97% accuracy, doing, great with that fluently on that level 12. At school, I want to review the phonics and spelling patterns of new words. So work on new words with her that she comes across in her reading level texts and have her write them down in the word dictionary. And when I do that with her during the day, if you can just kind of review those new words with her at home and have her maybe practice writing them down or just reading them to you over and over and over again, just so she can get more and more familiar with them. I think by doing both of those things, we can continue to push that independent reading level and have her progress even higher. For spelling, like I said, great with her consonants, initial, final, and short vowels. I would love to reintroduce blends to her, which is kind of the next step, and just focus on final consonant blends. And that way I could I'll introduce the topic, share examples, and then work together in like a guided learning where she's writing and reading, especially reading those blends. And then at home, I'll send home some word sorts, and if she could just practice sorting, those blended words together, that would be great. Understanding sentences, I'm going to work on narratives and having her elaborate, just asking questions, gradually pushing her past just repetition. And then if you could just reread and revise, give her lots of opportunity to write, and ask her prompting questions to get her to read more, then that would be really, really good for her. As far as some areas that I would love to work on with her, she's not, we need to work a little bit on her digraphs and blends. Digraphs meaning like the letters, two letters together that make one noise, so like, and blend meaning two that blend together. For example, I always remember digraph. There's a digraph in the word digraph, so the PH, and then there's a blend in the word blend, so BL. She got a 1 out of 7 on her digraphs, 3 out of 7 on her blends, on her PSI for writing, and then when it came to reading, she missed 11 out of the 19 blends and 9 out of the 15 on the names test. So that's kind of an area that we can definitely work on with her. I want to practice at school decoding by analogy and reviewing those phonics rules with her. I think it's just a sense of review and practice and practice. And so I can go over those rules if when she's at home, and she comes across a blend, just have her slowly read the word so she can hear every single sound. Um, if she's not hearing all the sounds of the word, she's not going to understand B, L, B, O. And so when she reads and she comes across a word, instead of just telling her, read them and then use flashcards for diagraphs to familiar yourself with the f, PH or the ch, CH, those kind of things as well. And then the last thing I would just love to work on with her as well is writing paragraph stories where she inputs her own ideas and uses correct punctuation. She's, like I said, she scored an average of 4.5 on language, which comes down to, not using all the periods or commas or using a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence kind of a thing, and a 4.5 on message quality. So she does a lot of repetition in her own writing, and I would love to try to see if we can include some of that her own ideas and foster that confidence in her writing as well. And a way that I'm thinking we could do that is at school. I would love to do more interactive writing experiences with her where we participate together in writing a story, and I have her write down, the punctuations, the capital letters, give her reminders as we need to. And then, as we're having her write down stories, asking her ideas, just continuing to give her confidence in what she tells me and being like, yeah, that's a great idea, like, good, and asking her questions that prompt her thinking. And at home, if she can just have her, like I said earlier with her writing, just have her practice writing. If she has a chance to write, just let her write, and then you can review it, and, same thing, ask her prompting questions to add more ideas, or, go over some punctuation with her, have her read it out loud to you and see if she can find her own punctuations and how it sounds and how else she can already add those ideas. But, between the diagraphs and blends in both reading and spelling and the paragraph stories with adding ideas and punctuations, those are two small areas that I think that we can work on, and I think that they'll also develop as we continue to work on those strengths as well. So we can use those strengths, and we can use her enthusiastic attitude towards learning to help her continue to progress. She is such a capable girl, and she, like I said, she has so many strengths. She loves to learn. She works really hard. She's humble in asking questions, and I think that we should definitely use that to our advantage. And these are some things that I'm going to work on with her. Do more independent during our step up 30 minutes, maybe take 10 minutes every day to work on literacy with her personally. Have interacting experiences together, as if you can just promise me or work with me and have her practice reading and writing. And I can give you a list of all these things that we went over today, but I know that she is so capable, and I know that you know that too. And I think between school and home and all the repetition, that will definitely get her to where her potential is and where she can definitely be with her learning. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Like I said, I can give you a copy of all this information, and we can just keep in touch and just keep working with her and those literacy strengths and using those to continue to develop in areas maybe where she's not as strong as well. So anyway, thank you so much for meeting with me today. You have a lovely daughter. I love having her in my classroom, and I love that you're willing to work with me so that we can work with her as well.